An immigrant shared her meal with another, unaware a hidden camera filmed her kindness. Fatima Nasir didn't know it yet, but this simple act, this momentary decision to share what little she had, would ripple through her life in ways she couldn't imagine. The hidden camera captured only the surface, a tired woman in a worn blue coat offering half her sandwich to a stranger on a bench. What the lens couldn't record was the 36 years of life that had led to this moment, or the extraordinary chain of events that would follow. The April morning was unusually cold. Fatima pulled her thin coat tighter, feeling the familiar ache of homesickness press against her ribs like an old friend. 6 months in America, and still the country felt like an ill-fitting garment, necessary but uncomfortable. She checked her watch, 43 minutes until her second shift began. Just enough time to eat the simple lunch she'd packed at dawn. Finding an empty bench in the small downtown park, she sat with the careful posture of someone who had been taught that even in rest, there was a proper way to hold oneself. From her bag, she withdrew a paper-wrapped sandwich, egg and cucumber on day-old bread she'd purchased at half price. A luxury by her recent standards. The sandwich was halfway to her mouth when she noticed the man. He sat on the bench diagonally across from hers, hunched against the chill. His clothes were clean but worn in a way Fatima recognized, the look of garments that had been washed too many times, of a person trying desperately to maintain dignity against diminishing resources. His gaze was fixed on her food, with the particular empty expression she had come to know well in her homeland during the hardest years. Hunger looked the same in every country. Fatima hesitated, the food suspended between her and her empty stomach. Her next shift would be 8 hours on her feet at the convenience store. The morning shift at the laundromat had already left her legs aching. The sandwich in her hand represented not just lunch, but the energy she needed to survive until evening. And yet there had been days after she'd first arrived, when she had been the one watching others eat, calculating how many hours until she could justify spending her dwindling funds on food. With a small sigh that carried no regret, only acceptance, Fatima carefully tore the sandwich in half. She wrapped one portion back in the paper and stood, her knees protesting the movement. 3 steps, 4, 5, and she stood before the man. "Please," she said, extending her hand with half the sandwich. Her accent was thick, but the kindness in the gesture needed no translation. The man looked up, surprise replacing the emptiness in his eyes. "I can't, please," she repeated, more firmly this time. "Is enough for both." Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition perhaps of shared struggle. After a heartbeat, he accepted the offering with a nod that contained both gratitude and something else, the acknowledgement of one human being seeing another. "Thank you," he said simply. Fatima nodded and returned to her bench, unaware of the small camera disguised as part of a nearby art installation, its lens capturing this exchange in high definition. Unaware that across town, a content producer for a local media company was watching the live feed, suddenly alert at this unexpected moment of genuine connection. Unaware that her simple act of kindness was already traveling through fiber optic cables to a computer where it would be trimmed, enhanced, and prepared for consumption by thousands of strangers hungry for evidence that goodness still existed in the world. She simply ate her half sandwich, watching the spring buds on the trees struggle against the unseasonable cold, just as she herself struggled each day in this new world. The man finished his portion and approached her bench. Up close, Fatima could see that he was older than she'd initially thought, perhaps in his 60s, with eyes that carried decades of stories. "My name is Howard," he said, extending a weathered hand. "Fatima," she replied, accepting the handshake with the formality her mother had taught her. "You're not from here," he said. "Not a question. No. Lebanon. 6 months now." Howard nodded, a small smile creasing his face. 40 years ago I was you. Different country, same lost feeling." His accent was faint but recognizable now that she listened for it. "You were immigrant?" Fatima asked, surprise warming her voice. "From Hungary. 1978. Came with nothing but the clothes I was wearing." He gestured to the bench. "May I?" Fatima nodded, shifting slightly to make room. There was something comforting about his presence, like finding a familiar word in a foreign paragraph. "I had someone share their food with me once," Howard said, looking out at the park rather than at her. "First week in New York. I was hungry, lost. A woman gave me half her hot dog." He chuckled softly. "I didn't even like hot dogs, but it was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in days." Fatima smiled, recognizing the feeling. Small kindness feels very big when you are alone. Yes, Howard agreed. Exactly that. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, two transplants from different soils finding momentary shelter in shared experience. You work nearby? Howard asked eventually. 2 jobs. Laundromat in morning. Convenience store afternoon and evening. Fatima checked her watch again. Must go soon. Howard nodded. Hard work. I remember those days. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small card, slightly bent at the corners. I own a restaurant now. Nothing fancy, just a small diner. If you ever need a meal or... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Or if you're looking for different work, come by. Fatima accepted the card, reading the simple text. Howard's Place, home cooking, with an address about 20 blocks from where they sat. Thank you, she said, tucking the card carefully into her coat pocket. She would save it, though she doubted she would use it. Experience had taught her that kindness often came with expectations she couldn't afford to meet. No, Howard said, standing with the careful movement of someone whose joints protested such actions. Thank you for the sandwich. And for reminding an old man of something important. Before she could ask what he meant, he nodded once more and walked away, his figure gradually disappearing among the lunch hour crowd now filling the park. Fatima gathered her things and headed toward her second job, the brief connection already fading against the pressing demands of survival. By the time she punched in at the convenience store, the memory of Howard had been filed away with the countless other fleeting interactions that filled her days, meaningful in the moment, but ultimately just another drop in the ocean of her new life. She could not have known that across the city, the video of her sharing her sandwich was being uploaded to the internet, or that by the time she finished her shift, it would have been viewed 37,000 times. The overnight shift at the convenience store always left Fatima feeling slightly detached from reality. The fluorescent lights, the endless parade of customers in varying states of inebriation, the strange liminality of the hours between midnight and dawn, it all combined to create a dreamlike state where time stretched and compressed unpredictably. She had picked up this third shift to cover for a co-worker, grateful for the extra hours despite the toll on her already exhausted body. The additional money would help with the ever-present anxiety about next month's rent. 3 jobs, endless hours, and still the fear of homelessness hovered like a shadow. Hey, aren't you the sandwich lady? Fatima looked up from where she was restocking cigarettes behind the counter. The customer, a young woman with bright blue hair and multiple piercings, was staring at her with unusual intensity. Excuse me? Fatima asked, confusion creasing her brow. From the video, the one sharing your lunch with that old guy. That was you, right? A cold uneasiness spread through Fatima's chest. Video? I don't understand. The woman pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward Fatima. This is totally you, right? On the small screen, Fatima watched herself tear her sandwich in half and walk across the park. The footage was slightly grainy but unmistakably her. The caption read, "Immigrant with nothing shares what little she has." Humanity still exists. Where did this come from? Fatima asked, her voice barely audible over the store's humming refrigerators. It's everywhere! Like over 1 million views now. People are trying to find you. The woman studied her face. It is you, right? Fatima nodded numbly, unable to form words. 1 million views? People were looking for her? Fear spiked through her exhaustion. As an immigrant still navigating the complex path to permanent residency, attention was the last thing she wanted. That's so cool! Can I get a selfie with you? The woman asked, already positioning herself beside the counter. No, please, Fatima said quickly. I'm working. I could lose job. The disappointment was clear on the woman's face, but she nodded. Sure, I get it. But you're like famous now. You should check online. People want to help you. After the woman left, Fatima's hands trembled as she continued restocking. Famous? Help? The words felt like threats rather than promises. Her carefully constructed life, invisible, hardworking, below notice, now potentially exposed to unknown eyes. The thought made her stomach clench with anxiety. When her shift ended at 6 a.m., Fatima stepped into the cool morning air with new wariness. Did people recognize her on the street now? Were they watching? The 3-block walk to her tiny studio apartment felt exposed in a way it never had before. Inside her apartment, a converted storage space with a hot plate, mini fridge, and bathroom so small she could barely turn around in it, Fatima finally allowed herself to sink onto her fold-out bed. The exhaustion of working 20 hours straight crashed over her, but sleep remained elusive as questions circled like hungry birds. Who had filmed her? Why? What did people want from her? In her experience, attention rarely led to anything good, especially for women, especially for immigrants. Despite her better judgment, Fatima pulled out her phone, an older model with a cracked screen but functional enough. With hesitant fingers, she typed "Immigrant shares sandwich video" into the search bar. The results made her breath catch. Page after page of links, all with variations of the same story. The video had indeed gone viral, spawning news articles, social media posts, and endless comments. Some headlines called her Sandwich Angel or the Immigrant Hero. Others focused on Howard, describing him as homeless, which Fatima was certain wasn't true, or elderly veteran, which might have been. The comments beneath the videos and articles ranged from touching to troubling. This is what real Americans do. Share what they have. She has nothing but still gives. Makes me ashamed of how selfish I am. Probably illegal. Deport! Does anyone know who she is? I want to help her. Crisis actors. Fake news to make you feel sorry for immigrants. Fatima closed the browser, her hand shaking. This was exactly what she had feared since leaving Lebanon, becoming visible in the wrong ways, becoming a symbol rather than a person, becoming a target. Her phone buzzed with a text message notification. It was from her manager at the convenience store. Corporate saw the video. Need to talk before your next shift. The words sat like stones in her stomach. Would she lose her job? The convenience store paid the best of her 3 positions. Without it, she wouldn't make rent. Sleep was impossible now. Fatima made herself a cup of strong tea and sat by her small window, watching the city wake up while her mind raced through contingencies. If she lost the convenience store job, perhaps she could pick up more hours at the laundromat or find something else quickly. There were always restaurants looking for dishwashers. As the sun rose higher, warming her tiny apartment, Fatima's gaze fell on her coat hanging by the door. From the pocket peeked the corner of Howard's card. She had forgotten about it in the chaos of the night. Howard's place, home cooking. He had offered help. But could she trust it? Desperation and pride wrestled within her as she stared at the card. Finally, exhaustion made the decision for her. She needed to sleep now. Later, when she woke, she would decide whether to call the number on the card or face her manager alone. As Fatima finally drifted into uneasy sleep across the city, Howard Kovacs was opening his diner for breakfast, completely unaware that he too had become an internet sensation overnight. The diner had stood on the same corner for 27 years. Howard had purchased it when it was failing, a grease-spotted relic with peeling linoleum and coffee that tasted like burnt memories. Over the decades, he had transformed it into something that, while never trendy or upscale, offered reliable comfort to its loyal customers. "You've got to see this, Howard," said Louisa, his longtime waitress, thrusting her phone at him the moment he walked through the door. "You're internet famous." Howard adjusted his glasses, squinting at the small screen. "What am I looking at?" "It's you!" "From yesterday. Someone filmed you and that woman sharing her sandwich." Howard watched the footage with growing discomfort. There he was, accepting half a sandwich from Fatima. The angle was strange, from above and to the side. He looked more desperate than he'd realized, and Fatima's kindness more pronounced. "Who took this?" he asked, his voice sharper than usual. Louisa shrugged. "Some group that puts hidden cameras around the city to capture random acts of kindness or something. They've got millions of followers. This one's going viral." Howard handed the phone back, a heaviness settling in his chest. That poor woman. She was just being kind. People love it. Look at the comments. Everyone wants to help you both. "Help?" Howard's brow furrowed. "I don't need help. I own a business, for God's sake. But her..." He trailed off, remembering Fatima's worn coat, the careful way she'd eaten her half of the sandwich. They've got it all wrong. She's the one working multiple jobs. I was just sitting there thinking about my wife. The mention of Eliza, gone 5 years now, brought the familiar ache. Yesterday had been their anniversary, which was why he'd been sitting in the park where they used to have lunch together, lost in memories and grief. He hadn't been hungry at all. He'd accepted Fatima's offering because refusing would have dishonored her kindness. "Well, famous or not, those breakfast specials won't cook themselves," Howard said gruffly, moving toward the kitchen to begin his day. But as he worked, cracking eggs, flipping pancakes, the rhythms so familiar he could do them in his sleep, Howard couldn't stop thinking about Fatima, about the quiet dignity in her posture, the careful way she spoke, the flash of recognition between two people who understood what it meant to rebuild a life from nothing in a strange land. And he thought about the video, spreading across the internet with its simplified narrative. How would this unwanted attention affect her? Immigration status could be precarious, visibility dangerous. Howard knew this intimately from his own early years in America. By mid-morning, the diner was unusually busy. Howard noticed customers taking surreptitious photos, whispering to each other while glancing his way. Some approached with awkward kindness, pressing bills into his hand despite his protests. Others just wanted selfies, as though his brief appearance in a viral video had transformed him from person to attraction. "I'm not homeless," he found himself explaining repeatedly. "I own this place." The woman in the video, she's the one working multiple jobs. She's the one who gave when she had little to give. But the narrative had already been set. No matter how many times Howard corrected the story, people seemed determined to cast him as the needy recipient, Fatima as the angel, and themselves as the appreciative audience. During a rare lull, Howard retreated to his small office at the back of the diner. From his wallet, he removed a worn photograph, Eliza at 43, laughing by the ocean, her hair blowing across her face. His finger traced the outline of her smile. "What would you do, Lubavi?" he murmured to the image. Even after 5 years, he still sought her counsel in quiet moments. The answer came as clearly as if she had whispered it in his ear. "Find the woman. Make sure she's okay." Howard nodded to himself, decision made. After the lunch rush, he would leave Louisa in charge and go to the convenience store where Fatima had mentioned working. Not to intrude, but to warn her about the video if she didn't already know, and to offer genuine help if she needed it. It was what Eliza would have done, and it was what one immigrant owed another in a world too quick to simplify their stories. The convenience store was tucked between a laundromat and a cell phone repair shop on a busy commercial street. Howard pushed open the door, setting off an electronic chime. Behind the counter stood not Fatima, but a young man with a bored expression. "Excuse me," Howard said, approaching the counter. "I'm looking for Fatima? She works here." The young man's expression shifted from boredom to recognition. "Oh man, you're the other one from the video. The homeless dude," Howard sighed. "I'm not homeless. I'm just looking for Fatima. Is she working today?" "Nah, man. She was supposed to come in at noon, but the manager told her not to. Said there's been too many people coming in asking about her, disrupting business." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think they're going to fire her. Corporate doesn't like attention unless they create it, you know?" A cold feeling settled in Howard's stomach. "Do you know where I can find her? It's important." "No idea. But if you find her, tell her Miguel says people have been leaving money for her. Manager's been collecting it." His expression suggested what he thought about that arrangement. Howard thanked him and left, standing on the sidewalk with indecision. The laundromat next door caught his eye. Hadn't Fatima mentioned working at one? It was worth a try. Inside, the humid air smelled of detergent and fabric softener. An older woman was folding sheets with practiced efficiency. "Excuse me," Howard said. "I'm looking for Fatima? She might work here." The woman regarded him suspiciously. "You another reporter? We already told you people she don't work here no more." "I'm not a reporter." Howard hesitated. "I'm a friend. We met yesterday. I'm worried about her." The suspicion didn't leave the woman's face, but something softened around her eyes. "You the man from the video?" Howard nodded reluctantly. She studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. "She got fired this morning. Owner saw the video, got worried about immigration checking his workers." She shook her head in disgust. "Fatima was his best employee. Always on time, never complained. Do you know where she lives? I just want to make sure she's okay." The woman hesitated. "I shouldn't tell you, but," she sighed. "She lives in the converted storage rooms above Mendoza's grocery on 9th, Unit C. You seem decent, but I swear, if you cause that girl any trouble—" "I won't," Howard promised. "Thank you." The walk to Mendoza's grocery gave Howard time to think. Fatima had lost 2 jobs because of that video, a video neither of them had consented to, a video that had simplified and commodified a genuine human moment for clicks and shares. The injustice of it burned in his chest. The converted storage rooms turned out to be a row of doors along the side of the building, accessible by an external metal staircase. Howard climbed slowly, his knees protesting each step. At Unit C, he hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Was he overstepping? Would his presence just make things worse? Before he could decide, the door opened, revealing Fatima. She looked even more tired than yesterday, her eyes shadowed, her posture slightly stooped. Recognition, then wariness crossed her face. "Howard? I'm sorry to intrude," he said quickly. "I wanted to check if you're okay." "The video? You know about it, not a question." Howard nodded. "May I come in? Just for a moment?" Fatima hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door wider. The room beyond was tiny but meticulously clean and organized. A fold-out bed, a small table with one chair, a hot plate on a miniature counter. The space reminded Howard painfully of his own first apartment in America. "I lost both jobs," Fatima said without preamble, gesturing for Howard to take the chair while she sat on the edge of the bed. "Convenience store, laundromat, both gone because of video." "I know. I went looking for you." Howard leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "I'm so sorry, Fatima. This shouldn't have happened." She shrugged, a gesture that tried for nonchalance but couldn't quite disguise the desperation beneath. "Is life. I will find new jobs. What about your third job? You mentioned working 3? Cleaning office buildings. Night work through agency. They don't know yet." Her eyes met his, and in them Howard saw a calculation of hours and dollars, of rent and food, of survival margins growing dangerously thin. "I meant what I said yesterday," Howard said carefully. "About coming to the diner if you need work. It's real work, not charity. I need help in the kitchen. Morning prep, dishes, learning to cook our menu. The pay is fair and there's a meal each shift." Fatima's expression remained guarded. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Howard considered his answer carefully. 40 years ago, I was where you are now. New country, no support, working impossible hours to survive. Someone helped me when I needed it most. This is how the circle continues." For a long moment, Fatima was silent, her gaze assessing. Howard waited, understanding the calculation she was making, the weighing of pride against necessity, of independence against survival. "When would I start?" she finally asked. Relief washed through Howard. "Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Early, I know, but early is no problem," Fatima said, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. "I am used to early." "Good. That's good." Howard stood, aware he had intruded long enough. "One more thing. There's an apartment above the diner. Nothing fancy, just a studio, but it has its own bathroom and kitchen. It comes with the job if you want it. Rent taken from your paycheck, but fair rate. Less than this, I'd guess." Fatima's eyes widened slightly. "You would rent to me? Just like that?" "The apartment's been empty since my last cook left. Better to have someone living there than no one." Howard moved toward the door, not wanting to pressure her. "Think about it. No rush to decide on the apartment, but the job is yours starting tomorrow if you want it." At the door, Howard paused, turning back. "One more thing. There's money for you. People who saw the video left it at the convenience store and my diner. It's yours." Fatima shook her head firmly. "I don't want charity. It's not charity. You earned it by reminding people what kindness looks like." Howard reached into his pocket and placed an envelope on the small table. "This is just what was left at my diner. Take it, don't take it, your choice. But it belongs to you." Before she could protest further, he nodded goodbye and left, making his way carefully down the metal stairs. He didn't look back, giving her the privacy to decide what happened next. He had extended the offer, the choice had to be hers. As he walked back toward his diner, Howard felt lighter than he had in years. Since Eliza's death, he had moved through life by rote, maintaining routines that kept him functioning but never fully engaged. Something about Fatima's simple act of kindness had awakened parts of him he thought had died with his wife. Whether Fatima accepted his offer or not, Howard knew something had shifted. A door had opened, and for the first time in a long time, he was curious to see what waited on the other side. Fatima stared at the envelope on her table long after Howard had gone. Pride warred with practicality inside her. The money would help, of course it would. But accepting it felt like agreeing to the narrative that had been imposed on her, the struggling immigrant, the noble poverty, the performance of need for a voyeuristic audience. And yet she did need it. With 2 jobs gone and rent due in 10 days, the math was unforgiving. With a sigh that carried the weight of compromise, Fatima opened the envelope. Inside was nearly $600 in various denominations, more than a week's wages from all 3 of her jobs combined. Clipped to the bills was a note in careful handwriting. "This was freely given by people who were moved by your kindness. To refuse it would be to refuse their chance to be kind in return. Sometimes the greatest generosity is allowing others to give. The words struck something deep in Fatima. How many times in Lebanon had she been the one who wanted to help others but couldn't? How often had she felt the frustration of empty hands when her heart was full of giving? Perhaps accepting could be its own form of generosity. Fatima tucked the money into her lockbox, decision made. She would use it for rent and necessities. And tomorrow she would start working at Howard's diner. Sleep came easier that night, despite the uncertainty still clouding her future. For the first time since coming to America, Fatima felt something crack open inside her chest, a tiny fissure in the wall she had built around herself for protection. Whether it was weakness or strength to allow that opening, she wasn't yet sure. Morning arrived with the pale light of early spring filtering through Fatima's single window. She dressed with care in her cleanest clothes, tied her hair back neatly, and packed what few possessions mattered into her backpack. The rest could be retrieved later if the job worked out, if the apartment above the diner became a reality. Hope was a dangerous thing for people in precarious positions. Fatima had learned this lesson repeatedly throughout her life, and yet, as she locked her door and descended the metal stairs one last time, she allowed herself a small measure of it, just enough to carry her forward into the unknown day. Howard's place was on a quiet corner in a residential neighborhood, its windows glowing warmly against the pre-dawn darkness. The sign was hand-painted, the building old but well-maintained. It looked, Fatima thought, like a place that had absorbed decades of stories into its very walls. Howard was waiting at the back door, his tall figure silhouetted against the kitchen light. "You came," he said, and Fatima heard the gentle surprise in his voice. "I said I would," she replied simply. He nodded, holding the door wider. "Then welcome to Howard's place. Let's get to work." The kitchen was smaller than Fatima had expected, but impeccably clean and organized. Howard moved through it with the comfortable familiarity of someone who had occupied the same space for years, showing her where things were kept, explaining the morning routine, prep work first, then setting up for breakfast service that began at 7 a.m. "Have you worked in restaurants before?" he asked, demonstrating how he wanted the potatoes diced. "In Beirut, yes. Family restaurant until—" Fatima trailed off, unwilling to venture into that territory of memory. "Yes, I have experience." Howard nodded, accepting the boundary. "Good. It will come back to you. Restaurant work is the same everywhere, controlled chaos." They worked side by side in comfortable silence, the rhythm of knives against cutting boards creating its own quiet music. Fatima found her body remembering movements she hadn't used in years. The efficient chopping, the careful measurement, the anticipation of next steps. It felt strangely like coming home. As dawn brightened outside, the front door chimed. "That'll be Louisa," Howard said. "She's been waiting to meet you." The woman who bustled into the kitchen was in her 50s, with steel gray hair pulled into a practical bun and laugh lines deeply etched around her eyes. She took one look at Fatima and broke into a wide smile. "So you're our famous sandwich angel," she said, enfolding Fatima in an unexpected hug. "I'm Louisa. Been working here since Howard's hair was still mostly brown." "Fatima," she replied, stiff in the embrace but not pulling away. "And I am not Angel, just person who shared food." "Ain't that the truth?" Louisa agreed, releasing her. "These internet people want everything to be a Hallmark movie. Life's messier than that." She turned to Howard. "Speaking of messy, we might have a situation this morning. That news van is back, parked across the street." Howard's expression darkened. "They can't come in during business hours. I made that clear yesterday." "Well, they're waiting for something, or someone." Louisa glanced meaningfully at Fatima. "Me? They are waiting for me?" Alarm raised Fatima's voice slightly. "How would they know I am here?" Howard and Louisa exchanged a look. "The internet," Louisa said simply. "Someone probably recognized Howard at your apartment yesterday, posted about it online. These vultures follow digital breadcrumbs." "I can go," Fatima said immediately, reaching for her backpack. "I don't want to bring problems to your business." "No." Howard's voice was firm. "This is exactly what's wrong with the whole situation. You shouldn't have to hide or change your life because someone filmed you without permission." He untied his apron, decision made. Louisa finished the prep with Fatima. "I'm going to have a word with our friends in the news van." "Howard," Fatima began, but he was already striding through the diner toward the front door, his tall figure radiating a controlled anger she hadn't seen in him before. "Don't worry," Louisa said, patting Fatima's arm. "Howard may look like a gentle giant, but he can be fierce when something matters to him. And he hates bullies, especially ones with cameras. Through the kitchen pass-through, Fatima could see Howard standing on the sidewalk, speaking to someone outside of view. His posture was straight, his gestures contained but emphatic. After several minutes, he returned, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "They're leaving," he announced. "I reminded them about harassment laws and threatened to call every one of their competitors with an exclusive about how they're hounding an immigrant woman just trying to work and live her life." "Will it work?" Fatima asked. "For today, yes. Tomorrow?" Howard shrugged. "People have short attention spans. Some new viral moment will capture their interest soon. Until then, we adapt." He retied his apron. "Now let's get back to work. Customers will be here soon, and the potatoes won't dice themselves." As the diner filled with the morning rush, Fatima remained in the kitchen, grateful for the barrier between herself and curious eyes. She fell into the work with increasing confidence, her body remembering skills long unused, the timing of eggs, the perfect flip of pancakes, the dance of preparing multiple orders simultaneously. By mid-morning, a comfortable rhythm had established itself. Howard cooked and expedited, calling orders in a clear, calm voice. Fatima prepared ingredients, plated dishes, and washed an endless stream of pans and utensils. Louisa swept in and out of the kitchen, bringing orders and carrying away finished plates, occasionally calling back compliments from customers. "Table 4 says those are the best home fries they've ever had," she reported during a brief lull. "Howard, I think your new prep cook has magic hands." Howard glanced at Fatima, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Not magic. Experience and care. The two most important ingredients in any dish." The simple praise warmed Fatima more than she expected. When had someone last acknowledged her skill at anything? In the laundromat and convenience store, she had been interchangeable, just another pair of hands performing necessary but unremarkable tasks. Here, in this kitchen, her movements mattered. The care with which she diced vegetables, the attention she paid to presentation, these things were seen and valued. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it fed something in her that had been starving far longer than her body ever had. The morning shift ended at 2 p.m. As the last customers paid their bills, Howard gestured for Fatima to join him at a corner booth. "Sit. Eat," he said, placing 2 plates of food on the table. "Everyone who works here gets a meal after shift. House rule." The simple lunch, a perfectly cooked omelet, crisp home fries, fresh greens, was the most satisfying meal Fatima had eaten in months. Not because the food itself was exceptional, though it was, but because she had helped create it, because she had earned it with work she respected. "You did well today," Howard said, watching her eat with evident satisfaction. "The kitchen is a good place for you." "Thank you for chance," Fatima replied. It felt, she searched for the right word, familiar. "In good way?" Howard nodded, understanding. "Familiar is underrated. Everyone's always chasing new experiences, but there's comfort in returning to what we know, what our hands remember even when our minds have moved on." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the quiet punctuated only by the sounds of Louisa closing out the register and the distant noise of traffic outside. "Have you thought about the apartment?" Howard asked eventually, his tone carefully neutral. Fatima set down her fork, considering. The prospect of a stable place, close to work, was tempting beyond measure. But there was still the nagging worry that accepting too much help created an obligation she might not be able to fulfill. "Is real apartment? Not charity room?" "Real apartment. Previous cook lived there 3 years. It's small but functional. Rent is $600 monthly, utilities included, taken from your paycheck in installments. That's below market for the neighborhood but not charity." Howard's eyes held hers steadily. "I don't offer what I can't sustain, Fatima. This is business, not rescue." The bluntness was refreshing. Fatima had grown tired of careful phrasing and hidden expectations. "I would like to see it," she said finally. Howard nodded, standing. "Let me show you now before the dinner prep starts." The apartment was accessed through an external staircase at the back of the building, similar to her current place but sturdier, better maintained. Howard unlocked the door and stepped back, allowing Fatima to enter first. The space was indeed small, perhaps 400 square feet, but with high ceilings that prevented it from feeling claustrophobic. A kitchenette lined one wall, with actual appliances rather than just a hot plate. The main room had enough space for a bed and small sitting area. The bathroom, while compact, contained a real tub rather than just a shower stall. Best of all were the windows, 3 large ones that filled the space with afternoon light, overlooking a small courtyard where herbs and flowers grew in terracotta pots. "The garden is communal," Howard explained, following her gaze. "Louisa plants the herbs we use in the kitchen. You're welcome to add whatever you like." Fatima moved through the space slowly, touching surfaces, opening cabinets, testing the water pressure. It was more than adequate. It was, in fact, lovely in its simplicity. "Previous tenant left furniture," Howard continued. "Bed, table, chairs, all clean, good condition. If you prefer your own, we can store these." Fatima shook her head. "This is perfect." The words slipped out before she could measure them, before she could apply her usual caution. Howard smiled, something softening in his weathered face. "Then it's yours, starting today if you want. First month's rent can be spread across your first 4 paychecks." "I can pay first month now?" Fatima said, thinking of the envelope of cash. "I prefer to start without debt." "As you wish." Howard handed her the keys, 2 on a simple ring. "Top one is for apartment, bottom for back door of diner. You'll need it for early shifts." Fatima accepted the keys, their weight in her palm both reassuring and terrifying. A new beginning again. How many times had she started over? Lebanon to Jordan for 6 months, then briefly to Turkey, finally to America. Each move had carried the same mixture of hope and fear, the same silent prayer. "Let this place be where I can finally stop running." "Thank you," she said simply, knowing the words were inadequate but unable to find better ones. Howard nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Dinner service starts at 5. Take the afternoon to move your things. Rest if you can. Tomorrow you'll work breakfast again, 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. We'll settle into a regular schedule by next week." After he left, Fatima stood alone in her new apartment, the keys still clutched in her hand. The silence enveloped her like a blessing after months of constant noise, the thin walls of her previous place never blocking the sounds of neighbors, traffic, the perpetual urban soundtrack of struggle and survival. Here, the quiet was profound. Here, perhaps, she could finally hear herself think, remember who she had been before loss and displacement had reduced her to the most basic functions of survival. For the first time since arriving in America, Fatima allowed herself to cry. Not the careful, silent tears she had permitted in her darkest moments, but deep, body-shaking sobs that released months of tension, fear, and exhaustion. She cried for what she had lost, for what she had endured, and for this unexpected kindness that threatened the protective walls she had built around her heart. When the tears finally subsided, Fatima washed her face with cool water, straightened her shoulders, and picked up her keys. She had an apartment to move into, a job to return to, and a future that suddenly contained possibilities beyond mere survival. One step at a time, she reminded herself. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and sometimes that step is sharing half a sandwich with a stranger. The days fell into a rhythm as April bloomed into May. Fatima worked the morning shift 6 days a week, learning the diner's menu, gradually taking on more cooking responsibilities as Howard recognized her natural skill in the kitchen. The viral video faded from public consciousness, replaced by new moments of outrage or inspiration in the perpetual churn of internet attention. On Sundays, her day off, Fatima explored her new neighborhood, the small library 2 blocks away, the international market where she could find spices from home, the park where locals walked dogs and children played regardless of weather. Slowly, cautiously, she began to feel less like a temporary visitor and more like someone who belonged, at least in this small corner of a vast, bewildering country. Howard proved to be a fair employer and a patient teacher. In the quiet mornings before the diner opened, as they prepped for the day ahead, he shared kitchen wisdom accumulated over decades, not just techniques for perfect eggs or crispy potatoes, but the philosophy behind feeding others. Cooking is the oldest form of love, he told her one morning as he demonstrated how to make his grandmother's paprikash. Before words, before touch even, humans showed care by sharing food. Everything else, all art, all expression, grew from that primal act of nourishment. Fatima absorbed these lessons along with the recipes, finding unexpected resonance between Howard's approach to food and her own grandmother's teachings in their Beirut kitchen long ago. Different ingredients, different traditions, but the same fundamental understanding that feeding others was a sacred responsibility, a form of communication deeper than language. As her confidence in the kitchen grew, so did her comfort with the diner's regular customers. Many had seen the video, of course, but under Howard and Louisa's protective watch, no one was allowed to make Fatima feel like a curiosity or a symbol. She was introduced simply as the new cook, and any attempts to discuss the sandwich incident were firmly redirected. Gradually, customers came to know Fatima for her cooking rather than her viral moment, for the subtle way she incorporated Lebanese touches into classic American diner fare, for the care evident in every plate that left the kitchen. Regular patrons began to request her specials, to ask after her if she missed a shift, to treat her with the familiar respect of a valued community member rather than the careful deference often shown to outsiders. 1 month after starting at Howard's place, Fatima received her first full paycheck. After rent and necessities, there was enough left to open a small savings account, the first step toward the security she had been seeking since leaving Lebanon. That night, she celebrated by cooking dinner for Howard and Louisa in her apartment, the first time she had entertained since coming to America. The meal was simple. Mujadara, a homey dish of lentils and rice topped with caramelized onions, served with a fresh salad and warm pita bread, but preparing it in her own kitchen, serving it on her own table to people who had become something like friends, felt like a milestone more significant than any paycheck. "This is incredible," Louisa declared, helping herself to seconds. "Howard, we need to put this on the menu." Howard nodded appreciatively as he ate. "Fatima's specials are already outselling my standards most days. I'm beginning to think I hired my replacement." Though his tone was joking, Fatima detected something genuine beneath it. Not concern, but a kind of satisfied recognition. She had noticed over the past weeks how Howard sometimes stood back in the kitchen, watching her work with an expression that combined pride and wistfulness. "I learn from you," she said sincerely. "Your diner, your recipes. A good restaurant evolves," Howard replied. 40 years I've been cooking in America, and the best things on my menu came from listening to other voices, incorporating other traditions." He set down his fork, his expression growing more serious. "Which brings me to something I've been wanting to discuss." Fatima felt a flutter of anxiety. Despite the weeks of stability, part of her remained braced for disappointment, for the sudden withdrawal of good fortune. "I'm getting older," Howard continued. 67 this year. "These past few years since losing Eliza, I've been running the diner more from habit than passion." His gaze met Fatima's directly. "But seeing your enthusiasm, your natural gift with food, it's reminded me why I started cooking in the first place." Louisa reached over to squeeze Howard's hand briefly, an unconscious gesture of support that spoke of years of friendship. "I want to expand the menu," Howard said. "Add a dinner special each night that incorporates your Lebanese heritage with my Hungarian background. East meets further east." His eyes crinkled with amusement at his own joke. "We'll call it a cultural exchange. And if they're successful, which I believe they will be, I'd like to offer you a partnership track." Fatima stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. "Partnership? In diner?" Howard nodded. "Not immediately. You'd need to learn the business side, ordering, accounting, staff management. But over time, yes, a junior partnership that could grow as you learn. I have no children, no family to leave the business to. I'd rather see it evolve than disappear when I eventually retire." The offer was so unexpected, so far beyond anything Fatima had allowed herself to imagine, that she couldn't immediately form a response. Partnership in a business? In America? For an immigrant woman who, just weeks ago, had been working 3 menial jobs just to afford a converted storage room? "You don't need to decide now," Howard added gently, recognizing her overwhelm. "Think about it. We can start with the dinner specials and see how it goes." Fatima took a deep breath, centering herself. "Thank you for believing in me, for seeing me." That night, after Howard and Louisa had gone, Fatima stood at her apartment window, looking out at the quiet street below. The neighborhood was settling into evening routines, lights coming on in windows, people returning from work, the occasional dog walker passing by. Normal life, stable life. For the first time since the upheavals that had driven her from Lebanon, Fatima allowed herself to think beyond survival, beyond next week or next month. A partnership, a business, a future with roots. The possibility expanded in her mind like a flower opening toward the sun, tentative at first, then with increasing confidence. She thought of her family's restaurant in Beirut, now gone like so much else from her previous life. The recipes she had learned at her grandmother's side, the traditions of hospitality that had shaped her understanding of community, perhaps those things weren't lost after all. Perhaps they had simply been waiting, dormant, for the right conditions to grow again in new soil. Fatima opened her phone and, after a moment's hesitation, downloaded a banking app. It was time to start planning for more than just next month's rent. It was time to plan for a future, not just any future, but one she was actively choosing rather than merely accepting. As spring deepened into summer, the partnership between Howard and Fatima blossomed in unexpected ways. Their culinary collaboration, which they playfully called the Beirut-Budapest Express, on the menu, became the talk of the neighborhood. Weeknight dinner service, previously the slowest part of the diner's business, now regularly filled to capacity as word spread about the unique fusion dishes that honored both traditions while creating something entirely new. Chicken paprikash served over Lebanese rice with pine nuts, traditional stuffed cabbage rolls infused with Middle Eastern spices, Hungarian langos topped with labneh and za'atar. Each dish told a story of migration, adaptation, and the universal language of comfort food. The local paper ran a small feature on their culinary partnership, carefully avoiding any mention of the viral video that had brought them together. Instead, the article focused on their shared immigrant experiences and how their collaboration represented the best of American possibility, the blending of traditions to create something that could only exist in a place where diverse cultures met and mingled. For Howard, the creative resurgence was visibly rejuvenating. The grief that had shadowed him since Eliza's death didn't disappear, but it settled into a more manageable companion rather than an overwhelming presence. Having purpose beyond routine, having someone to mentor and collaborate with, brought a light back to his eyes that Louisa commented on frequently. "Haven't seen him this engaged since before Eliza got sick," she told Fatima one afternoon as they prepped for dinner service. "You've been good medicine for him." For Fatima, the transformation was equally profound but less visible. The constant anxiety that had been her companion since leaving Lebanon, the hypervigilance, the bracing for the next crisis, the careful conservation of resources and emotion, gradually eased. She began to sleep through the night more often than not. She allowed herself small pleasures, fresh flowers for her apartment, a new cookbook, comfortable shoes for the long hours in the kitchen. Most significantly, she began to make connections beyond Howard and Louisa. Regular customers became acquaintances, then friends. The librarian who saved Lebanese cookbooks for her. The elderly couple who never missed Wednesday dinner service because the stuffed cabbage reminded the husband of his mother's cooking. The young mother who brought her children in for Saturday breakfast and asked Fatima to teach them a few words of Arabic. Slowly, thread by thread, Fatima found herself being woven into the fabric of the community. Not as a viral sensation or a symbol, but as herself, a skilled cook, a hardworking immigrant, a woman rebuilding her life one day at a time. One sweltering July evening, after a particularly busy dinner service, Howard and Fatima sat at the counter sharing a cold drink as Louisa finished closing procedures. "I've been thinking," Howard said, his tone casual though his expression was anything but. "The partnership we discussed? I'd like to make it official if you're still interested." Fatima looked at him in surprise. "So soon? You said I need to learn business side first. You're learning faster than I expected. And ... He hesitated, then continued with characteristic directness. "Life is unpredictable, Fatima. I've been reminded of that rather dramatically in recent years. I'd prefer to have things settled, plans in place." Something in his voice caught Fatima's attention, a note she hadn't heard before. "Howard, are you unwell?" He waved away the concern, though not quite convincingly. "Just getting older. Nothing specific. But at my age, it's foolish to pretend time is unlimited." His eyes met hers, serious but not somber. "I believe in what we're building here. I want to ensure it continues whether I'm in the kitchen or not." The implications settled between them, not urgent but undeniable. Howard was planning for a future that might not include him. The thought sent a surprising pang through Fatima's chest. "I would be honored," she said finally. "To be your partner, to continue what you've built." Howard nodded, satisfaction and something like relief crossing his features. "Good. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. 25% to start, with options to increase over time." He raised his glass slightly. "To the future of Howard and Fatima's place." The amended name caught her by surprise, bringing unexpected tears to her eyes. "You would change the name?" "Names should reflect reality," Howard said simply. "And the reality is, this place is becoming as much yours as mine." As it should be. Later that night, in her apartment, Fatima found herself doing something she hadn't done in months, looking at the viral video that had changed her life. The footage seemed strange now, almost like watching strangers. Was that really her, so thin and tired, so careful in her movements? Was that Howard, sitting alone with his grief on what she now knew had been his wedding anniversary? Two people at their lowest moments, captured without consent, their brief connection commodified for mass consumption. It should have been an invasion, an exploitation. And yet, against all odds, it had led to this, to a partnership, to a belonging, to a future neither of them could have imagined that April morning. The mystery of life, Fatima thought as she closed the video, was not just its hardships, but its strange, unpredictable mercies. How the worst moments sometimes contained the seeds of renewal. How sharing half a sandwich with a stranger could, through the most unlikely chain of events, lead to sharing a business, a purpose, a new definition of home. 6 months to the day after the video had been filmed, Fatima did something she had been planning for weeks. She invited Howard to dinner at her apartment, not for business discussion or menu planning, but for a meal that represented everything that had changed. She cooked all day, preparing dishes from Lebanon that she hadn't made since leaving home, her grandmother's recipes that required time, patience, and ingredients she'd had to search the city to find. Kibanaya, raw lamb with bulgur and spices, stuffed grape leaves with rice and herbs, freshly made hummus with olive oil from her home region, tabbouleh bright with parsley and lemon, and in the center of the table, a dish she had created herself. Hungarian-inspired stuffed peppers filled with Lebanese spiced rice and meat, topped with a yogurt sauce that bridged both culinary traditions. A dish that existed because she existed in this in-between space, carrying the flavors of home while embracing the possibilities of her new life. When Howard arrived, his reaction to the spread was everything Fatima had hoped for, surprise followed by genuine emotion as he recognized the meaning behind the elaborate meal. "You've been planning this," he said, taking in the carefully arranged dishes. Fatima nodded. 6 months since the video, since half sandwich. Seemed important to mark occasion properly. They ate slowly, savoring each dish, talking about food, but also about deeper things, about Eliza and how she would have loved their culinary partnership, about Fatima's family in Lebanon and the restaurant they had lost, about the strange workings of fate that had brought them together on that cold April morning. After the meal, Fatima brought out a small box wrapped in simple paper. "A gift," she explained, suddenly shy. "To say thank you." Howard opened it carefully to reveal a handmade cookbook, recipes written in Fatima's neat handwriting, illustrated with small sketches divided into sections. Lebanon, Hungary, and Howard and Fatima's place. "Every special we've created together," she explained, "plus traditional recipes from both our cultures. So nothing is lost." Howard ran his fingers over the pages, his expression unreadable for a long moment. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bright with emotion. "In my culture," he said quietly, "we have a saying, God writes straight with crooked lines. It means that even the most unlikely difficult paths can lead to exactly where we need to be." He closed the book gently. 6 months ago, I was a man going through the motions, running a diner out of habit, missing my wife, wondering what purpose remained. And you were a woman working 3 jobs, isolated, just trying to survive. "And now?" Fatima asked. Howard smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "Now we're business partners creating something neither of us could have made alone. Now we're proving that good can come from even the most intrusive violations of privacy." His smile turned wry. "Though I still wouldn't recommend being secretly filmed as a career strategy." Fatima laughed, a free, open sound that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. "No, very inefficient method. Much better to just apply for job." "Much better," Howard agreed, raising his glass. "To unlikely beginnings, to unexpected kindness," Fatima added, touching her glass to his. Outside her window, the summer evening settled over the neighborhood, their neighborhood now. In the garden below, the herbs Fatima had planted alongside Luisa's were flourishing in the warm weather. Inside, in this small apartment above a diner that now bore her name, Fatima felt the final pieces of her new life clicking into place. She had come to America seeking safety and opportunity. She had found something more profound, a purpose, a partnership, a place where her skills and heritage were valued rather than erased, all because she had torn a sandwich in half one cold morning, unaware that a hidden camera filmed her kindness. The universe, it seemed, sometimes paid attention to the smallest acts of humanity, and occasionally, when the timing was just right, it transformed them into something extraordinary. An immigrant had shared her meal with another, unaware a hidden camera filmed her kindness. 6 months later, she shared a business, a future, and the certainty that belonging could be found in the most unexpected places, if only one had the courage to offer half a sandwich to a stranger.